No, just give. This is much more important because everybody can become infertile in one generation.
One sound bicycle.
Experts are worried about Japan's population trend. They say nearly half the country's municipalities could see the number of young women fall drastically. Members of a government panel say more young women will move to big cities over the next 25 years. There will be fewer women of childbearing age. Some rural communities may disappear as a result. Panel members project population trends for nearly 900 municipalities. They estimate the number of women in their 20s and 30s could fall by more than half by 2040. The report urges local governments to make it easier for women to raise children. Panel members also propose creating regional centers where young people would like to live.
Central and local governments, as well as businesses, should do all they can to deal with the issue.
Not much can be done to stop or even slow Japan's population decline, but Masuda says the country should try to prevent too many people from moving to Tokyo.
One soundbite. I should say something about Fukushima and also Chernobyl, but certainly now Fukushima and infertility. The truth is that infertility has been increasing in the world for the last 30 or 40 years, probably because of all the radionuclides that people are exposed to, originally from the weapons fallout and the global atmospheric testing, and then from Chernobyl, and now from Fukushima. And there are things that people there can do to try and minimize this. But the main thing is to get away from the radiation, because what they have to realize is that this is an invisible attack on the human race. It's something that will appear over the next 20, 30, 40 years, and its cause will not really be investigated. So I also predict, as a result of this ECRR model, that there will be significant increases in infertility in Japan as a result of this accident, and this is quite terrible. And in many ways it's more terrible than the cancer in adults, because it's destroying children who could have been born but now will not be born. And some of those who are going to be born, from our studies in the Middle East, will have horrifying deformities, and will obviously, in an advanced country like Japan, will be aborted clinically aborted before they get born, so that the birth rate will fall.
What did the data show until now, before Fukushima?
Oh yes, the data has been showing that the birth rate, that the sperm count in men has been falling drastically. There was a very important study done in Jerusalem a few years ago, which showed that Israeli men had very low sperm count, and that over the previous 10 years it had fallen by a significant amount. And the authors of that study said that if it continued to fall at the same rate, by the year 2020, that they would be totally infertile, and the Israelis would have no more children. It's as bad as that. It's as bad as that. And we're now, as a result of Fukushima, introducing a huge load more of this stuff into the atmosphere. But I have to say that it will mostly affect the Japanese, as far as I can tell. It will mostly be a Japanese affair, but that doesn't make it any better.
And where does the radiation come from in Israel?
In Israel, it comes from the use of uranium weapons. The massive use of uranium weapons by the various military invaders, I suppose you would call them, the US, the allies they call them, used hundreds and maybe thousands of tons of uranium weapons. There's a new weapon now which uses uranium, and we've made measurements in the hair of the mothers in Fallujah and mothers of children with congenital anomalies. And this study hasn't been published yet, but what we have found is significant man-made uranium in the hair of these mothers, which is almost certainly the cause of the congenital anomalies. And where you have congenital anomalies, of course, you also have infertility. It's just that in Fallujah, they don't have sufficient medical methodology to pick up these deformities before they're born. They don't have all the ultrasound stuff and so on, but in the West they probably find these things and abort them early. So that's why we have these big increases. But the increases are associated with an environmental exposure to uranium. That's the point. And you have to remember that Fukushima contains probably 2,000 tons of uranium. 2,000 tons. Chernobyl had 200 tons, and 50 tons of it exploded. So all the things that Alexei Yablokov is talking about is a consequence of 50 tons of uranium in Europe with with fission products, of course. But in Fukushima, there's more than that. In principle, if the whole lot goes up, it's a massive amount of uranium.
And are there some long-term consequences after 20, 30 years, 40 years?
It doesn't go away. What Alexei says is true. It doesn't go away. What Rosa Goncharova showed here in her talk, when she was studying the bank voles, the little animals that live in the Chernobyl zone, was that once you irradiate these creatures, and also human beings, Dubrova has shown this, you initiate a process called genomic instability, and then this is like throwing a switch. And what it does is it increases the genetic mutation rate, quite apart from any mutation that the uranium causes or the radiation causes. That's a separate thing. This is like an automatic switch that is thrown at quite low doses, and then you pass this switch on to your children and they pass it on to their children and so on. And then with the bank voles, I know that they've studied the bank voles and found that 22 generations have still got this switch. Now I've studied the nuclear test veterans. These are the men who worked for the British Army at the nuclear tests in the Pacific in the 60s, and I studied their children and their grandchildren. And what we found was that the children of these test veterans, this is the British Nuclear Test Veteran Association, have about a 9-fold excess of congenital malformations. But the extraordinary thing is that the grandchildren also have an 8-fold excess of congenital malformations. So the normal genetic idea that you pick off the weak and then it goes down and then you get the strong, and eventually, this is the old nuclear idea of the nuclear war, we just have radiation-resistant people who survive. It's just not true. What happens is that it throws a big switch and everybody is affected, and you're affected for generations and generations. So it doesn't even matter if the uranium goes away. It doesn't matter if these radionuclides all decay, because you've imprinted something on the human genome which is there forever. That's the danger.
Thanks a lot, thank you.
Twisting in the wind and I begin to see the problems. Facing lines, I'm tracing them until they start dissolving. I can't see my whole life all at once, so I make changes by the moment. Some things lost and some things gained, and each one may as well be the same. Pretty picture I am painting. Forward when I'm really looking back, I'm only feigning. Crystallized in dreams that only show me what I already know. Death disguised as life and hell as heaven, it's just a place that we go. The consequences don't seem clear, because they never really get so near. Are you able to forgive the body for the life it lives and all the things it makes you do beyond the reach of you? Mistaking guilt for pleasure, is there any other measure of a man understanding what he can do, what he can't